So I've been going to the gym for the better part of about 17 years at this point. Started with just athletics and then progressively came more and more a part of who I am. And in that time, I have certainly been confronted with my fair share of plateaus and feeling like I'm not making progress. In fact, there was a good chunk of years where I made zero progress at all. And so I know where you're coming from whenever you're a little frustrated. You haven't seen results in maybe over a year to 2 years. You've kind of stagnated and stayed in the same spot. And so what this leads to is, you go down all of these rabbit holes on YouTube for information. So, you watch the Milo Wolfs, you watch Dr. Mike Israetel, Renaissance Periodization, Dr. Pack, Alexander Bromley, Ben Pekulski, Stan Efferding. You watch all these guys because you're trying to look for what is that one piece of information or training technique that is going to take my gains to the next level. And all of that is great, but the issue that that comes with science, for instance, is science most of the time is a population-based approach where nuance and things that, aren't really considered in science is what brings everything down to the level of the individual. So if you can't look through the science lens and be like, okay, this could work, and then figure out how to apply it to you and where it fits into you, you're not really going to see much results. And I might get some pushback on this, but getting jacked is relatively easy. And what I mean by this is, like, if you don't know how to do something, it's hard. And if you know how to do something, that thing is easy. The problem with getting jacked, or people that have a hard time with it, is it's hard to stay consistent for a long enough period of time. So you have to develop some level of patience. Now, a lot of people, you might sit here and be like, dude, I've been patient. It's been 3 years and I still haven't gotten anything. And that's what the point of this video is going to be about, is because you have to have some form of a model or framework that you can work from that takes out the complexity, so it starts simple. And as you expand out to really find where the gap in your training is, then you can start to get into the more complicated things. But most people are really bad about doing the basics. And they're really bad about doing the basics for a long enough period of time to see those results. So the model I'm proposing, we're going to go back to like junior high, like very elementary chemistry, right? So I'm calling it the Valence Model. So if you think about like an atom, you have the nucleus, protons, electrons, all that stuff. And as it goes out, that first valence, the little circle that goes around the nucleus, usually is only going to have one, maybe two electrons, right? And as it continues to expand out, more electrons can be on the valences that go further out. And I'm not a scientist or a physicist or anything, so I might be butchering it, but you get the point. So we're going to start from somewhere in the middle, and we're going to slowly work out. And we're going to analyze, like, are we doing these things well? And could we do certain things better before going out even further? And if you can use this model or have a model that you can refer to, then you are going to be able to get out of any plateau that you have, because your level of decision making and analyzing of the problems that you have it's going to be a lot easier to overcome them and know exactly what to fix. And the faster you can make an effective decision, the quicker you can get the result that you want. So let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, this is my fancy Valence model for finding your breakthrough. So when we look at this, we have to start in the middle, which is basically, this middle part is your body, right? So the very first spot that we have to look at here is, are you showing up? Are you consistently showing up enough to actually even think about getting some form of a result? I would say here it's at minimum 3 days a week. And this should be an obvious yes or no, and you probably know this. Now, when we go out a layer, this area is where we have to ask ourselves, are we creating a necessity for adaptation to occur? So that usually comes from two parts: technique and overall effort. Are you pushing yourself hard enough to elicit a response? So whenever we look at technique, it's, are we providing an adequate amount of mechanical tension and range of motion in order to elicit a growth response? And then is our effort high enough to also, like, are we reaching a point of involuntary decrease in speed of our reps while maintaining good form? And so if we're doing that, then we can go out to the next valence, which is, it's actually creating the adaptation. And actually creating the adaptation is, how is your nutrition? Are you getting adequate calories? Are you getting adequate protein? So is your protein at 1 gram per pound of body weight consistently? And I don't mean 4 or 5 days a week. I mean 7 days a week. Are you hitting your protein requirement? Because what I tend to find with people is, whenever you talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, I've been dieting, doing this thing. It's like, okay, well, are you tracking everything? No. And that's why you still kind of look like crap, because you're not consistently doing the things, and these things have a compound effect. So you've got to have patience with the nutrition part, but then we have to go over here and look at sleep. Are we sleeping enough? Sleep is whenever we get a lot of the repair. In fact, you're probably going to get a bulk of it. And it's not like, it's not like all sleep is created equal. You have to get 7 to 8 hours on average. Some people might be able to do less. Odds are you're not them. And this is the reason you have to do that, is because your body is concerned with a lot of other things and repairing before it's concerned with growing muscle. So you have to make sure you're getting enough sleep in order to do that. And then the last point we have to go down to and look at is stress management. How are we managing our stress? Do we have good emotional intelligence? Do we have a good financial situation? Is that stuff improving? Do we have good relationships with people? And do we have ways to decompress outside of work and doing things that actually fill up our cup, as cliche as that sounds? Because if we don't have that and we're constantly in a stressed out state, our body also doesn't have a chance to calm down. And all of that extra energy we're using for, cortisol and all this other stuff, your body still has to help repair that during sleep. And if it has an overwhelming amount of stuff like that it has to deal with, you're not going to recover as well as you need to. So you really have to look at, how am I managing stress? And if you have to start meditating, going to therapy, whatever it is, go for a 10-minute walk a day. You've got to be able to manage the stressors in your life effectively in order to continue to grow. And now, most people are not consistent enough with these first two, with these outer, or the second and third valence here. And I would argue anybody that has consistently done those things for a significant period of time will tell you, yes, that's literally all it takes. Everything else is just kind of icing on the cake, and that is the 90% of the results that you're going to get over your lifetime in the gym. Most of the stuff on YouTube that, people argue about or make content about is literally the 5 to 10% of shit that really doesn't matter as much as this other stuff, right? So you got to quit arguing for pennies on the dollar when it comes to your fitness, because most of it's going to come from the basics. And any expert, true expert, that's not just trying to market whatever product they have or get their name out there, is going to tell you that these are the most important things. And then on the last valence, this is whenever we can get into the more, nuances of training and the science and everything. And it's just continuing to create that necessity for adaptation after your body is stalled out. And so this is whenever you can look at rest times. Do you need to rest longer to continue to drive more output in for each subsequent set that you are doing? Load. Do you need to increase weight in order to continue to create mechanical tension after your technique is already dialed in? And this is the big thing. Your technique needs to be dialed in before you worry about adding weight. And so this idea of that a lot of people will do, it's I'll just add more weight and it'll force me into a new range of motion, is not the way to do it, because that's how injury happens. Then we can look at intensity and RIR. How are we manipulating intensity? Does our body respond well when we go to absolute failure? If that's the case, maybe do fewer working sets. Do we get less fatigue when we, stop 1 to 2 reps shy of failure? Then maybe that's what we have to do, and we just have to add another set. And then you see the rest of the valence out on this outer valence. You have reps, how many reps are you doing? Rep ranges. All in all, if you're within 5 to 20 reps, you're going to be fine. It's just about getting to getting close to failure and bringing your intensity up. And then same with sets. Honestly, guys, the shit does not matter. High volume, high intensity, low intensity. Most important thing is just to stay consistent. It's not worth arguing about, and it's not worth overthinking about and continuing to change and jump from program to program because you think that everything on this outer valence is going to give you 90% of the shit. And it's not. It's these really the inner three that you need to make sure is dialed in before even worrying about what program you're running, what RIR you're doing, how many sets you're doing per week. Because I know there's a lot of people, and granted, some of these might be genetic outliers. There's people that probably only do 2 direct shoulder sets, and they've got snow caps that you could hike on for shoulders, right? So I urge you to use this model as a way of evaluating, are you doing all the basic things that you need to do really well? Because I promise if you do these things really well, it is so easy to get jacked. And to be honest, hell, you might need a coach. If you are having trouble staying consistent, you might need to get a coach. For me, that was the biggest game changer for me after college, is I spent about 2 years being stuck in the same spot, didn't get a coach. The moment I got a coach and had somebody else that was essentially my guardrails while I was going down this path, it led me to more results because that's all I needed. I'm just naturally an executor, and you might be that. You might be a person that, hey, if you tell me what to do, I will just execute it, no questions asked. And you might need it. Or you might just need a buddy to help keep you accountable. But I hope this helped you kind of paint a better picture of how you need to start looking at evaluating when you're stuck. Because most of the time, it's just the basics that you're not doing for a long enough period of time to see results. And results in this game are very slow. And if you have the patience to be able to be, consistent and just wait it out, I promise you will be jacked. It's that easy. So if this helped, leave a comment. Appreciate it. Peace.